join. JaiBhim, everyone. My name is Venkat Moroju, and I'm one of the board member of Boston Study Group. So some of you know Boston Study Group. It's a non-profit registered with IRS with a 501c3 status and an Ambedkarite organization in New England. We are dedicated to working towards a just and equitable society. So BSG organizes workshops on caste in universities, monthly meetings, Ambedkar lecture series, where speakers from various countries speak on a variety of subjects. We engage in other social activities in Boston area to create educational and organizing infrastructure to carry forward our mission. Our membership is composed of individuals, families, students, scholars, academics, and workers who share our vision of equality and upliftment of socially oppressed people anywhere in the world. We're particularly interested in creating support structures and working with students from historically marginalized backgrounds. We are inspired by those who work for human welfare, from Buddha, Sant Ravidas to Savitri Mai, Jyotiba Phule to Periyar and Ambedkar, and Dr. Ambedkar, the Awakened. So we also bring out a digital magazine twice a year called Awakened. It is a platform for all Ambedkarites in the diaspora to share their stories, thoughts, views, and talents to enhance the Ambedkarite movement. We publish the magazine twice a year in spring and fall, and we are looking for literary contributions from across the globe. And if you're interested, please let us know, or you can visit our website, bostonstudygroup.org. And all the previous magazines are also there on the website, bostonstudygroup.org. You could go and visit them. So today we have a very distinguished speaker, Sunita Viswanath. I'm very honored to introduce her. She's the founder of Hindus for Human Rights, which is Sunita is a Indian American activist who has worked in women's and human rights organization for the past 30 years. Sunita has worked in various organizations devoted to women's rights in Afghanistan. In 2011, she was awarded the Feminist Majority Foundation's Global Women's Rights Award for this work. In 2011, Sunita co-founded Sadhana, Coalition of Progressive Hindus, to be a progressive Hindu movement aligned with social justice, commitment to anti-casteism and anti-racism. And in 2015, she was honored as a White House Champion of Change for her work with Sadhana. In 2019, Sunita co-founded Hindus for Human Rights, a US-based advocacy organization that aims to promote religious pluralism in North America and South Asia. Sunita and Hindus for Human Rights are working with Muslim and Ambedkarite organizations in the USA to fight the right-wing Hindutva forces in the USA. Sunita was actively involved in America Against Caste Discrimination, a coalition formed for supporting SB 403 bill in California state. Sunita has so many other humanitarian activities and initiatives to her credit, which is difficult to cover in the short time we have. Sunita will be speaking for 30 to 45 minutes, and then we can have a Q&A session for another 30 minutes. So I would, it's a great honor to invite Sunita Viswanathan, take the stage. So Sunita, please, you could start.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. My talk has a title, Hindus for Human Rights, the Case for a Strong Worldwide Movement of Anti-Caste Hindus. So good morning, Namaste, JaiBhim. I'm here to talk about the work I'm involved in to combat caste from a Hindu perspective. I will talk about Hindus for Human Rights, sadhana, and other work that I'm involved in with Hindu religious leaders across the world, as well as my personal journey. And I sincerely thank you all for this opportunity for dialogue. India's foremost Dalit rights advocate, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, said he was born a Hindu but would not die one. Many consider Dr. Ambedkar's decision to leave Hinduism, taking 300,000 Dalits with him, a denouncement of the faith. However, Dr. Ambedkar also called on Hindus to, and I quote, give a new doctrinal basis to your religion, a basis that will be in consonance with liberty, equality, and fraternity. In short, with democracy. And that's a quote specifically from Annihilation of Caste. Dr. Ambedkar may have left Hinduism, but stated Hindus don't need to look outside Hindu texts, especially the Upanishads, for anti-caste reform. Our work is a response to Dr. Ambedkar's challenge to Hindus to manifest a radically inclusive Hinduism that affirms human dignity and equality. I recently watched Ava DuVernay's Origin, based on Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, and the details of her life. Wilkerson presents three contexts as she builds her argument that caste and casteism, which she defines as the, and I quote, the granting or withholding of respect, status, honor, attention, privileges, resources, benefit of the doubt, and human kindness to someone on the basis of their perceived rank or standing in the hierarchy, better describes the subjugation of African Americans than race and racism. The three contexts that Wilkerson addresses are treatment of Black people in the US, treatment of Jews in Nazi Germany, and treatment of Dalits in India. Caste, the book and the movie Origins, begins with the true and tragic story of a German Aryan man, August Landmesser, who falls in love with a Jewish woman, Irma Eckler, and rejects Nazism. The Nuremberg laws rendered their love illegal. And Wilkerson tells us, though Aryan himself, his openness to the humanity of the people who had been deemed beneath him gave him a stake in their well-being, their fates tied to his. Wilkerson challenges us, especially those who form the upper castes in whichever system of caste injustice we live. Unless people are willing to transcend their fears, endure discomfort and derision, suffer the scorn of loved ones and neighbors and co-workers and friends, fall into disfavor of perhaps everyone they know, face exclusion and even banishment, it would be numerically impossible, humanly impossible for everyone to be that man. What would it take to be him in any era? What would it take for him what would it take to be him now? Wilkerson's own husband is a white man, Fred Hamilton. He is that man in our era. We learn of the great love between Wilkerson and Brett Hamilton, a love that transcends race and caste. We are witness to the deep care he shows Wilkerson's mother. Wilkerson is utterly devastated when Hamilton dies, and we are convinced that the upper caste in America, namely white people, have a central role to play in bringing about racial justice in this country. The third context tackled in caste is India. We are introduced to the millennia-old caste system in India, its origins in the Hindu faith tradition. We meet modern-day Dalit scholars and learn about the life and work of Dr. Ambedkar, India's most famous and revered Dalit rights activist. However, while we meet good white people fighting racism and good Aryans fighting Nazi fascism, we do not meet good caste Hindus fighting caste and casteism in the Indian context. It's a three-legged stool with just two legs. Enter Hindus for Human Rights because that's what we are. People who identify as Hindu, religious, secular, political, cultural Hindus who stand against the entire caste system. We're that third stool leg. I was born into an Andhra Brahmin family in South India. My family was very religious and ritualistic, and I have many positive and empowering associations with growing up Hindu. I think what I loved most was the intimacy of our religious practice. God was in the comics I read, in the food I ate, emblazoned on my lunchbox and my water bottle, and on the mud guards of every vehicle in sight. Embodied in the people I loved, parents, elders, teachers. Lord Krishna was both my naughty little neighbor who lived downstairs and also the handsome man my favorite cousin was marrying for love. And to the aunt who raised me, I was Krishna, because just like him, I had two doting mothers. And there was one more thing I was aware of from a very young age. The gods in the stories I was raised with were very flawed. And this meant we were forgiven our mistakes. And the idea was just to do one's best, to be the best we can be. I loved the smells of the puja items, flowers, incense, sandalwood, and the rhythmic chanting of our prayers. We all had to fast until the end of every puja, which usually lasted several hours, but the anticipation of the katha or story at the very end, which explained the significance and lesson of this particular puja, this particular occasion, and the inevitable feast that followed it was a highlight of my childhood. The lessons or morals of these stories were always good ones. I wasn't ever taught to be anything other than generous and compassionate. However, in the same family which gave and taught me love, untouchability was practiced. These were the years 1973 to 1978, my most formative years. I was a little girl with dark brown skin, black unruly hair, glasses with thick lenses, and an argumentative nature. My family allowed all my questions and all my objections. But even though I didn't like that we couldn't touch or play with or even look at the little girl that cleaned our bathroom, nothing changed. She was called Scavenger, and she scurried in and out twice a day, and she left wet footprints behind her. And my act of personal defiance was that when no one was looking, I would step in the perfect wet footsteps she left behind. In fact, her footsteps reminded me of the perfect white footsteps that we would paint on the floor to depict God's footsteps on some of our puja days. The tiny me who knew nothing saw the divine in this little girl who wasn't even human to my family. From my teenage onwards, like so many people my age, I looked for meaning in the world, a reason for pain and suffering, and a way to understand my purpose. I found a lot of helpful answers in my religion. The basic concepts worked for me, and they still do. God, the divine, if she exists, is in you and me, no matter who you are, and in all of the universe. The best life is a life of selfless service. You do your dharma with all your heart because it's the right thing to do without being attached to the consequences, the fruits. And fear of failure is not a deterrent to correct action. And these core teachings did not allow caste. I have always been an anti-caste Hindu. Dr. Cornel West says of himself, I am a revolutionary Christian. But if Christianity requires me to value a Jewish baby over a Palestinian baby, I am not a Christian. Similarly, for me, the only way I can be Hindu is to reject caste. Moving away now from the personal to our work. Many of you know that I'm the co-founder of both Sadhana and Hindus for Human Rights. Sadhana was founded in the fall of 2011, and we were already sensing a rightward shift in our Hindu community. And there was no organization that we knew of for progressive Hindus. The co-founders of Sadhana, Aminta Kilawan Narayan, Rohan Narayan, and myself, were tired of being in interfaith and social justice groups, actions, spaces that didn't include Hindus. We yearned to connect our community service, human rights advocacy, and activism to our faith. I was the only Indian among the co-founders and was particularly concerned about the growth in power and visibility of Hindutva proponents. As Hindus whose explicit purpose was to stand for social justice and an inclusive, just society, our first commitment was to stand against caste. We knew that the task of building a Hinduism that rejected caste entirely was gargantuan, but taking an explicit stand as anti-caste Hindus was our first and necessary step. Over the next 8 years, Sadhana worked at the grassroots level, mostly in the New York Indo-Caribbean community. This was both because Aminta and Rohan are Guyanese, and they are beloved in their community, and because the Indian Hindu community were not welcoming to us. Sadhana's flagship projects are our beach cleanups in Jamaica Bay, Queens, our progressive priest network, and our liberation theology reading group. These projects are still ongoing. The progressive priests in our network stand against caste, and caste is not a part of the marriages and other rituals they perform. Similarly, the liberation theology reading group's central concern is a Hinduism synonymous with radical justice, radical inclusiveness, and annihilation of caste. Around the time we started Sadhana, I discovered the work of Dr. Anantanand Rambachan, a Trinidadian Vedantic scholar and practitioner, and the author of A Hindu Theology of Liberation, among many other works. Anantji has been my spiritual mentor and guru. And Pandita Pratima Dubey, a queer-identified Devi Bhakt, goddess worshipper from Queens by way of Guyana, is the priestess I turn to for all joys and sorrows in my personal life. Another friend and spiritual mentor who guided our work was Swami Agnivesh, a Hindu monk who devoted his entire life to the rights of bonded laborers and ending caste. But unfortunately, his death was hastened by 2 brutal beatings by Hindutva mobs in India. In 2019, Raju Rajagopal and I, among several others, co-founded Hindus for Human Rights because Narendra Modi's second landslide win convinced us that a separate Hindu advocacy platform was urgently needed, which directly addressed the Hindu right in India and the diaspora. Hindus for Human Rights, just like Sadhana, is a Hindu organization that stands against caste and Hindutva and seeks to build a Hindu force for social justice. Hindus for Human Rights works in 3 main areas: policy advocacy, media advocacy, and grassroots base building. Because the Hindu right seeks to divide us, we insist on working in robust and diverse coalitions with Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Dalits, and caste-oppressed groups, and secular left groups. Our Dalit and Ambedkarite partners in this work include Dalit Solidarity Forum, Ambedkar King Study Circle, Ambedkar International Center, International Commission for Dalit Rights, and others. In India, we have worked with the Kerala-based Rights and the Gujarat-based Dalit Shakti Kendra. And we are incredibly honored that our advisory board includes important leaders, Dr. Anand Teltumde and Martin McQuan, who are Dalit by caste. We were the only Hindu group that fought to make caste a protected category in Seattle successfully, and California unsuccessfully so far, but we haven't given up. Our advocacy from a Hindu perspective in support of anti-caste legislation and in opposition to cynical so-called Hindu phobia bills has been an important contribution in the US political arena. And projects like our essay and art competition and college campus fellowship bring an anti-caste Hindu perspective to children and youth. There is another emerging area of work tangential to Hindus for Human Rights and Sadhana, which I am deeply involved in. It has the name Sama Darshini, or Seeing Equally. This project brings together Hindu religious leaders across America, from India and other countries like South Africa, Australia, and the UK to jointly bring together an anti-caste Hindu theology for our times. This work entails looking back at anti-caste resources like the life and writings of Bhakti saints and revolutionaries like Kabir and Basavarna, and gathering and often creating texts, resources, prayers, rituals, prayers for a Hindu dharma liberated from caste and every form of discrimination. Basavarna and Mahadevi Akka were anti-caste revolutionaries who lived in the 12th century in Karnataka. Kabir Das and Ravi Das both lived in Varanasi in the 15th century, and their verses rail against caste and all organized religion. In fact, the lives lived and verses written by radical reformers, anti-caste activists, Bhakti saints, and poets, this is the powerful legacy which we anti-caste Hindus can draw on and be guided by. We aren't the first Hindus who wanted to live lives that renounce caste entirely. Tiruvalluvar in the 2nd century BCE, Tirumalar, 6th century, Andar, 7th century, Basavarna, 12th century, Mahadevi Akka, 12th century, Ramananda, 15th century, Kabir and Ravidas in the 16th century, Eknath in the 16th century, Tukaram, 17th century, Ayya Vaikunthar, 19th century, Narayana Guru, 19th and 20th century are just some. They all spoke of human brotherhood and the equality of all before God. Most of them advocated an equality that was an ideal of the religious and not the secular sphere. I see this bhakti legacy as our sampradaya, our spiritual lineage. Listen to these words from Basavarna. One who kills is a pariah, Mariga. One who eats filth is indeed an inferior person, Holeya. What has birth got to do with superior class or inferior class? By birth, all are equal. Our Lord, Kadala Sangamadevas, Sharanas, indeed belong to the superior class as they wish for the welfare of all living beings. And these words from Kabir, if you say you're a Brahmin, born of a mother who's a Brahmin, was there a special canal through which you were born? Hindus for Human Rights and Sadhana and the people who participate in our movement are activated by the rise of Hindutva and a subsequent sense of urgency. The Hindu far right is advancing its Islamophobic and casteist agenda in India and the diaspora. Given that Hindus are the majority community, our motivation is strategic as well as ethical and spiritual. There is no way that Hindutva can be defeated and caste annihilated if Hindus aren't a part of the resistance movements. While some will denounce and disavow Hinduism, 1 billion people will not convert out. Anti-caste Hindus, we believe, must engage our community on these issues. In the diaspora context, Hindutva organizations like Hindu American Foundation have had a free run for decades, precisely because there has been no progressive Hindu alternative. The Hindu right has found ideological and political partners among the MAGA white nationalists and the Zionists. And we progressive Hindus have found sibling movements among progressive Christians and Jews. For the past 8 months, we have watched in horror as Israel perpetrates nothing short of a genocide on Gaza. As Indian Americans, we are doubly complicit because America is the major funder and provider of arms for this genocide, and India has shockingly also sent bombs to Israel to be used on Gaza. In a recent New York City event about Hindutva and Zionism and their far-right murderous collusion through history and in this moment, a speaker said that the resistance of anti-Zionist Jews cannot be replicated by Hindus against Hindutva, like me, because of the complicating factor of caste. I believe the anti-caste leaders and icon through history would disagree with this vehemently, as do I. I take great inspiration from the anti-Zionist Jews, including hundreds of rabbis who are taking to the streets, getting beaten and arrested, and standing up to their families, communities, and congregations, not only because of the carnage happening in their names, but to defend their faith itself. Many of the Jews taking a bold stand are religious, and many more, like my own husband, are secular. Religious and secular Hindus need to stand up in the exact same way against caste and Hindutva as they have throughout history. And as they did in India's recent elections, particularly in Ayodhya, it is remarkable that Hindutva, the BJP, was roundly defeated in Ayodhya, the ground zero of the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. The person who defeated the BJP candidate in Ayodhya, Avdesh Prasad, was a Dalit man. And immediately after the results were announced, Prasad was felicitated by the Swamis and Sadhvis of Ayodhya, and one of them joyously sent me a photograph. My friend and colleague, Dr. Roja Singh, founder of Dalit Solidarity Forum, often talks about liberating Dalit identity. And Dalit scholar Dr. Anand Teltumde, who is also grandson-in-law of Dr. Ambedkar himself, would rather be called a civil rights activist than a Dalit activist because his purpose is justice that transcends caste. Dr. Ambedkar's second wife, Savita Ambedkar, was from a Brahmin background, as was the friend with whom Dr. Ambedkar led a Manusmriti burning ceremony on December 25, 1927. Anti-caste leaders Jyoti Rao and Savitabhai Phule did not have children of their own, but they adopted the son of a Brahmin widow. I had begun by talking about Isabel Wilkerson and my chagrin that she spotlighted caste privilege resistance in the German and American context, but not in the Indian context. This omission has now been compounded by another omission. Wilkerson makes a great deal of the German who renounced Nazism because he loved a Jew. However, the plight of the Palestinians was 7 decades old when she wrote her book and made her movie, and yet she does not make mention of it. A Dalit scholar does express solidarity with the Palestinians in her movie, but this is just a fleeting moment. And now, 8 months into the latest genocide on Gaza, as far as I can see, Wilkerson has not said a single word about it. She has not used her massive platform to call for a ceasefire. I am a firm believer that as much as we work on the caste systems we are immediately complicit in and or victimized by, it is imperative that we connect that struggle to connected and universal struggles. All of us who stand against hatred and bigotry need to figure out ways to stand together and for each other like our lives depend on it, because they do. I have been told directly to my face many times that the project of building an anti-caste Hinduism is futile. Take caste out of Hinduism and you no longer have Hinduism. That's a direct quote that has been said to me. While everyone has the right to their beliefs, I reject this simplistic reduction of my faith to caste with no potential for reform. Just as I reject the Hindutva movement's efforts to homogenize Hindu identity into what Anustup Basu has rightly referred to as political monotheism. Both narratives fail to acknowledge the long history of traditions and thinkers from all walks of life who identified as Hindu and who unequivocally rejected the caste system, but who have been erased or sidelined by Brahminical hegemony and the rise of Hindutva. Dr. Ambedkar did ultimately leave Hinduism, but after a lifetime of effort to understand the potential for anti-caste reform in Hindu society. His annihilation of caste is the speech he was to give at a meeting of the Jat Pat Todak Mandal in 1936. This Hindu organization's name reveals that its central concern was its opposition to caste. I often wonder what history might have been had they not uninvited Dr. Ambedkar to their meeting. In a way, the work we are doing in Hindus for Human Rights connects back to that moment. We are honored to work with Ambedkarites. In his riddle number 22 in Riddles of Hinduism, Dr. Ambedkar distinguished between Brahmanism and what he calls Brahmaism, summed up by 3 Mahavakyas or great sayings of the Upanishads. The first is Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, all this is Brahma. The second, Aham Brahmasmi, Atma is the same as Brahma, and therefore I am Brahma. And the third, Tattvam Asi, Atma is the same as Brahma, therefore thou art also Brahma. This is identical to the simple teaching I was raised on, which is that the divine is present equally and identically in you and me, no matter who you are. Such a teaching does not allow caste. It does not allow an other. Dr. Ambedkar says that Brahmaism, that is, the radically inclusive tenets at the heart of Hindu thought, can be the basis of a secular democracy. It is the mission and mandate of these Hindu organizations and initiatives that I am a part of, and my personal mission to take up this challenge. History has shown us that changing systems from within can be a powerful strategy. Movements like the Civil Rights Movement in the USA, the abolition of apartheid in South Africa, and the reformations between various religious traditions demonstrate the potential for profound transformation when change arises from those who are part of the system. That is our mandate, to work towards change and reform from within the Hindu community by lifting up its teachings of human equality and dignity. However, this is not the only path to change. External pressures and movements, such as international solidarity campaigns, advocacy from outside organizations, grassroots uprisings, and movements that reject a belief system entirely with an accurate and totalizing critique, have also played critical roles in driving systemic change. Hindus for Human Rights employs a multi-pronged strategy, combining internal reform and external pressure, aligning efforts from multiple levels, embracing or rejecting deeply ingrained beliefs and cultural practices, and ultimately, we hope, realizing a more just and equitable society. While we make a conscious effort to honor and uplift the rich history of anti-caste traditions and thinkers throughout history who existed and worked within and outside the Hindu fold, our emphasis on the pluralism and multiplicity of Hindu identity means we do not confine ourselves to our vision of an anti-caste Hinduism to any one tradition or school of thought. The label Hindu, to us, means something different to every one of our members, staff, and board who identify with that term. But what brings us together is our shared understanding that we have a collective responsibility to take up Dr. Ambedkar's challenge and articulate a Hindu voice against caste and all forms of oppression and for human equality and dignity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sunita. So you are a Telugu, so I call Sunita Garu then. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful, remarks. I think you touched a lot of, aspects of the challenges that Hinduism faces when it comes to, treating all humans equally, the inequalities, untouchability, and it's a major challenge. And I'm glad you took this challenge coming from a very privileged background. Okay, so not often. I mean, for as an Ambedkarite, I myself, whether anybody likes or not, I call myself an Ambedkarite. That is a first. So I will never discriminate anybody, even if I hate ideology of some people, but as an individual, I respect everyone. I might, differ with their ideology. I hate their ideology, but not individual. So in that case, I never hold grudge against people who born with privilege, but those who practice these discriminatory, things. Those are the ones we don't like. But I think pardon, good.
I agree with you completely.
Yeah. So there is a lot. I'm one of those. We have to reach out. In Ambedkarism, there's a big challenge of how do we build solidarity? Who do we build? Or some people want to ghettoize. There's a lot happening discussion. But I'm one of those who believe that we have to. Ambedkarism and these values of equality and human dignity, it just has to cross everywhere, and we have to build solidarity with all sections, including the who are I don't want to say the Brahmins are bad people, but those who consider right? We have to build those bridges, and that's the only way we can, as a collective society, we can transform ourselves. It's not one person, one section, one caste, one group. As a humanity, we need to tackle these these issues. So with that, thank you very much. So I have a couple of just one comment on your. I mean, you read a long list of social reformers.
I'm
going
sure
back.
I left very important ones out as well.
Yeah.
But it's not an exhaustive list by any.
No, I know, but just I'm not holding you, but is often neglected. So in this, I learned very lately is this Brahmangaru, Potuluru Veera Brahmendra Swami. You don't know much about it?
No, I would.
Yeah, you need to read about him. Okay, he's a Telugu. He is considered in the southern India. He's one of the modern social reformers of southern India, early ones in 16th century. Potuluru Veera Brahmendra Swami, who was, basically fought against exactly same thing like, Kabir and, Sant Ravidas and, So there is unfortunately, you see, he's known for Kalagnanam, this, but that is that is not a great part of him that I cherish, but he's also a big anti-caste, what do you call, reformist, and he did a lot of work. And unfortunately, not a lot written about him in Telugu. I mean, in English. But you can read a little bit. Is there on the website, and there's a good movie that N.T. Ramarao made. He was used to be and they say, right, the Periyar movement actually foundation came from, actually Veera Brahmendra Swami, Brahmangaru. The problem today is people are building temples and doing puja for it, which is exactly opposite to
I just went this February I was in India and I spent a week in Karnataka with the Lingayat community
Yeah,
and I saw huge temples to
for Basava,
Basavana. I'm sure he would not
I
have
know.
been in
How do
support.
you? I know. I mean, I think some sense, Ambedkar is becoming like that. I'm a little worried about. So anyway, he's actually there is a old his place is there called Brahmangari Matam in near Kadapa. I also haven't had a chance, but just wanted to add that yeah. Anyway, so just my one question. So what Hinduism, okay, I know Dr. Ambedkar did, nobody probably has, I mean, is one of those that is exhaustive study of religions and including Hinduism, and came to a conclusion that it is beyond reform, right? That is I mean, he didn't take it easily. He spent about 20-25 years studying various religions and, and then formed an opinion and made a decision. So he thought it's a beyond reform. Things like the what we call Sri Ram, Maryada Purushottam, who is the ideal person, and every day we were taught in the from childhood to today's government, and the same that type of Rama has done so many bad things. Like one direct thing is this killing of Shambuka, right? But just because he belonged to a lower caste, right? And then you read Mahabharata. I mean, Karna, how he was subjected to indignity and how he was treated just because he come from a lower caste. And these are the things entrenched. I mean, I can probably go on referring to these things entrenched in our the fundamental texts of Hinduism. And I mean, day in and day out, they are taught. So it's a very gigantical task to how do you change that type of a narration in the
So,
fundamentals of religion, right? So
right,
that is one thing I grapple with. So I would like to your opinion on that, please. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's very fair questions you're raising.
yeah,
And my answer to it would be, it's my personal answer. And
yeah,
again, anybody, if whatever you believe,
right,
obviously you're right. And if
right,
somebody wants to move away from any religion because of these kinds of flaws within it,
right,
obviously they can do that. The way I was raised and the way I think about it is that, and I said this in my comments, the fact that there are so many mistakes done by the gods and goddesses and the flaws are so
right,
there are so many throughout the stories, I believe are to teach us because we are told God is in us. So if the God is flawed, then and you are flawed, the God can do better, you can do better. I believe the point of those teachings are
yeah,
to hold a mirror to ourselves and to not sort of, like in many I'm married to a Jewish man. I mean, there's a lot of feeling guilty about everything
right,
in my husband's community. In the way that I was raised, rather than sort of dwell on feeling guilty, do better, be better is the way that I see those teachings. And there's another thing in Hinduism, at least the way I understand it, which is that there are Shruti and Smriti texts. So there are the religious texts which are supposed to be actually handed down like the divine word, and there are the vast majority of the Hindu texts have human authors, and so there's a kind of a feeling of liberation and empowerment that you can say, I don't believe this part of this story. I don't accept this text.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I don't have a problem with burning the
correct.
Manusmriti and parts of other texts and
Yeah, yeah,
taking the parts of I mean, we are accused of cherry picking, but actually I have the religious right to cherry pick. And in fact, the fact that the Tulsidas Ramayana was relatively written so recently, and it is considered a religious text. Probably somebody right now is writing something that will be the religious text of the future. So I think that's the way I think about your question. I don't know if that
No,
I don't know.
that's a fair answer. I know, like there's a vast amount of literature and opinions, and these are all man written, right? Somebody has written. I mean, we have to accept. There's. I am actually. Let me. And the full disclosure. I'm an atheist. Okay, atheist became very. I mean, I grew up in a fairly very traditional family. With my mother was very devotional, but my whole family was very progressive. We used to have Bible, we used to have Quran, we used to have Muslim. I mean, I grew up in Telangana region. It was a beautiful place actually. When I grew up with a lot of communism influence, we didn't know much about caste also. That's a long story. I discovered caste after coming to America, working in with Telugu diaspora. That is my experience. So, hard way I discovered Ambedkar Pule after coming to America, very sadly. But what I my next question is, I mean,
Oh,
is
I'm
yeah,
sorry. Could I also add, because you had said about, and I said this in my talk also, I just wanted to say it again because of your question. It is, I mean, it would be silly to deny that Baba Sahib Ambedkar renounced Hinduism towards at the end of his life. So he did that deep study of Hinduism, and for himself, it didn't cut it. He left the religion. But there
right,
are those quotes that he leaves us with, and it is
yeah,
not for everyone, but for me, they have his quotes that leave that opening to a Hindu like me. That forms the mission of my life.
yeah,
He left that little door open for
yeah,
somebody like me.
yeah. No, I agree. So one other question is, actually I start questioning myself, and I want to put it, today, if non-religious, you call atheism or
You muted, Venkat, you muted yourself. Venkat, you muted yourself.
Venkat sir, you are on mute.
Well, as he unmutes, let
yeah,
me say that
yeah, sorry about that. I think I'm okay. Can
in
you
Hinduism, Venkat Garu, I should say.
yeah.
In Hinduism, there are schools of thought that are atheist.
Oh yeah, actually, that's a problem with Hinduism. Actually, they'll say everything is ours. They're making Buddha theirs, and but this whole when they opt him as a one more avatara and all that. It's a very little difficult, and I think sometimes it's you know a co-option of the Sai Baba. I don't know what religion he is from, but they do with golden. He was going like what is his name? Fakir, and now we put a gold, diamond jewelry to Sai Baba, and people are going after it. It's a very difficult thing to some rationalize. But coming back to my question, is if we were to say whatever atheism or those who don't believe in any God or religion, actually God, I mean, Buddhism also doesn't have God, but it's a religion. Those who don't identify that they belong to any religion is like if you add all those numbers, it's probably the second largest or third largest group of humans in the world, especially China becoming non-religion, Japan and Europe, most of them claim to not have religion. Okay, so in this context, I mean, people like us, the way I look at it is historically the religion, I don't know how much good it has done, but all major conflicts were
he's
you
muted.
see with the Palestinian and thing, or India and Pakistan. I mean, I can go on. This religion has played a very, very central role. So is religion important for humanity? As we are evolving and science and technology developing, we are trying to rationalize everything. So that's my just honest question.
So, I mean, as time proceeds, I guess we'll see about how religion is diminished in our society. Probably that is the trend. But as a human rights activist, that is completely committed to grassroots work.
Yeah,
I cannot come into a grassroots setting with a preconceived kind of, religion is bad. This is my decision. I cannot walk into a grassroots space, a village, a community, and say, and with my view that religion is bad, and impose that on a group of people. Wherever I have worked at the grassroots, there has been, whether it's in this country or other countries, I have seen, religion very present. And I'm not just talking about the Indian context. And so as long as I'm a human rights activist, I want to be where the people are, and religion is there where the people are. And I'm on the board of Amnesty International USA. Wherever I go doing my work as my advocacy as a human rights activist, I feel one of my purposes is to bring up the fact that many people in this world are religious. And so having these conversations
80%,
about their rights, about the lives of people, without often not even mentioning it, especially because religion is misused to oppress people. Having these conversations about human rights without bringing religion into it, I think is utterly irresponsible. And so that's one thing that I feel very strongly about. And the other thing is, just from a very strategic, perspective, if we're talking about India and Hinduism and Hindutva and caste, if we really want to defeat Hinduism and annihilate caste, honestly, how are we going to do that? Think of it as just a problem to solve, a logic problem. I don't think it's possible if Hindus don't get into the resistance movements. Hindus have to change. They have to renounce caste and stand against Hindutva, and then we can, as hopefully I'm an optimist. I hope that we'll be able to come closer to some kind of justice over time. But if Hindus don't change and reform, I don't think we have a chance.
Okay. I agree. 80% of the population believe in religion, whether we like it or not. And, including, I think Dr. Baba Sahib said, religion in a very subtle way that, it becomes important for common people, of whoever common people are, right? It is an important thing. But unless you transcend a certain level of, whatever the human spirit is different, but a common person.
Many movements throughout history, throughout the world, including in this country, the vanguard of civil rights movements have been people of faith.
Correct. Martin Luther King has been a great example. Yes, I agree. So thanks for that answer. So now I'll go back to audio. I mean, our audience and there are some questions already in the chat. So this is from Roshan. Thanks, Roshan, for asking this question. So I'll read that. Do you work with Muslims and Christian groups, notably the treatment of Bedouins in Kuwait? I'm sorry, I didn't know a lot, but I hope. Then Ahmadis in Pakistan, Black people segregated in Christianity, and them leading to establish Black churches. That is one question. Let me see. And then he has I think Roshan also has a follow-up question. Says, Dalits who convert to Abrahamic religions, are they still considered Dalit? I think those are from Roshan. Okay, maybe I'll read. He has a lot of questions. Maybe you can combine. What about he's again Roshan saying that, what about the perfect human beings in the Abrahamic religions? They murdered many people. Okay, so maybe, three questions he was asking about whether, overall the people, these minorities in Kuwait and Pakistan, and what about Blacks? Please go ahead.
We participate in interfaith social justice spaces in America, and we have fledgling tiny chapters in Australia and the UK, and those chapters are also becoming part of the interfaith social justice movements in those countries. And we have a base in India, but in India it's dangerous, and so it's not, it's kind of a little underground. The people who are in Hindus for Human Rights in India, we're not public about their names, but and they're also throughout our work and across the world, wherever we are working, we work with Muslims, Christians, Dalits, and people from other faith traditions, and also the secular left in those countries. We absolutely work in coalition. It's definitional for us, because that is exactly what the Hindu right does not want us to do. When the Hindu American Foundation sued us, that happened 1 year after Hindus for Human Rights was founded. They sued two Hindus, me and Raju from Hindus for Human Rights, a Muslim, a Christian, and an educator, because the Hindu right doesn't like minds being opened and truth being told. So the fact that that's who they sued, that coalition of people is exactly what we will not be separated from. So the answer to the first question was yes, and maybe not specifically Bedouins in Kuwait and stuff. Maybe not, like, we can't be everywhere, but in spirit, we will be with minority communities, whose rights are being denied and trampled on anywhere. That is where our heart is. That's the priority, actually. The priority is not the priority of our work. You can't be everywhere. The most important place to be and focus your attention is where the rights are most denied.
Got it. I mean, this is, I don't know. I also, yeah.
I've raised my hand for a long time. You're ignoring it.
No, we are not ignoring anybody. Who is that? Satinath? No, see, we just started the question. It's not Satinath, a very senior admi hai. You cannot make these type of comments. Huh? It's a first question from the audience I took. He joined, Roshan joined much earlier, and he asked. So you have to be respectful, okay? So go ahead now. You can ask your question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think the phrase anti-caste, or the word combination anti-caste movement itself is a problem. People who are against racial discrimination, say in America or anywhere, don't call their thinking or movement as anti-race movement. They first they were first. Let me finish, please. They were first calling it affirmative action, which was also which means nothing without approaching race-based quota. So they diluted it, and actually it was adjudicated against by the conservative courts here. So, but then they saw that, okay, then that if there is no somewhat loose quota, then they started calling equalization of races as affirmative, as diversity and inclusiveness. Now, so inclusiveness and diversity can be achieved by the looks of the people. If a company looks pure lily white, then it's not inclusive. It doesn't have diversity. And therefore, they are they feel bad about it themselves, and then they include. But in India, we don't have that appearance difference between the upper caste and the lower caste. I mean, there are some subtle differences, but not really. One can't tell the caste. So inclusiveness and diversity. How will that work without caste? The caste label. that people may use if they are not getting their share of participation and rights. And so this even the annihilation of caste, the title was not really chosen by Dr. Ambedkar. He simply wrote his speech and had that title from the title chosen by these these Hindu groups, which were
Satyanath ji, with due respect, please, ask your question. I think we have, a lot of people. Please, can you conclude and ask your question or comment? Yeah.
So, this anti-caste movement should really be called caste equalization movement, race equalization movement. Any whatever is the basis of negative discrimination needs to be challenged, needs to be negated by positive discrimination, positive of the discriminated group, of the erstwhile group. If we don't, then the only thing that people put people in positions of power is by looking at their so-called merit, which they measure with the help of some either degrees or some kind of test. So how do you propose to equalize castes, which is the real anti-caste movement, without the labels attached to various groups which are at the bottom of the society? Okay, that's my question finally.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Sunita ji.
So first of all, I understand you don't like the terms, but I do. In America, there are many people who consider themselves anti-racist, and we do call it the anti-racist movement. It's one of the names for the movement that fights racial injustice in this country. And anti-caste Hindu is what I am. So what you're bringing up technical problems that as a society we will have to address. How do you, and I have this question too. How do we annihilate caste when, people's communities in which they belong are named by castes? And the affirmative action system in India, the reservation system, which we need to keep it. I mean, until there's more equitable distribution of resources and access to resources, we need that protection. But as long as we have it, people have to identify by their castes. And there's no annihilation of caste as long as we perpetuate our caste. So I see what you're saying, but that's a problem that over the next generations we will have to address. But I do know that the starting point is to say no, resounding no, and absolute no to the caste system that we have, that originated from my religion and exists not just in India, but in other parts of the world as well, because its baggage is an atrocity. Its baggage is an unacceptable human atrocity.
Okay, thank you, Sunita. So let's go to Anil next. Anil, I think, has a comment more than a question. So Anil, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Venkat.
Yeah, thanks.
Nice to see you, Sunita.
Hi.
So just wanted to kind of acknowledge our collaboration with Hindus for Human Rights. We have been working with them for last 3 to 4 years now. One major collaboration we had earlier on was we needed a lawyer, and for the Cisco amicus brief, Cisco caste discrimination, and HFHR Rajgopal of Hindus for Human Rights, based in Bay Area, helped us with that, and we have been kind of friends, talking to each other. We have been on various platforms together. The other joint effort amongst the organizations, various like-minded organizations, were America Against Caste Discrimination Coalition, wherein all the Ambedkarite orgs, IAMC, HFHR, and everybody came together to help pass some of this caste legislation, especially starting with in California. So great collaboration, and just wanted to highlight this collaboration can bring like-minded organizations closer. We can fight the Hindutva forces, the BJP, and so on. Uh, we will also have access to a lot of resources and connections that are outside of typically the Dalit organizations do not have. We'll be able to have that access to those resources. We have been on some congressional hearings with the help of Hindus for Human Rights and IAMC and so on. So there is an urgent need for all the Dalit organizations to kind of start collaborating with the like-minded organizations like Savera, Biju Varghese, who brings some of these like-minded organizations together. So people who are on the call are like senior leaders from various organizations. Bear that in mind that this collaboration can go a long way. Like Baba Sahib worked with some of the Brahmins, so to say, in Mahad Satyagraha, in Manusmriti Dahan, and so on. So just wanted to say that. Thank you, Sunita, and thank you, Boston Study Group, for hosting Sunita on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Anil.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you. Yeah, Anil is a glue to a lot of different organizations, and they put a tremendous effort in both, Seattle, the city case, as well as SB 403 in California. Thank you, Anil, for all your work. Okay.
It's glue for
Yeah.
us too.
Please, you want to comment, Sunita?
I was just saying he's a glue in our work too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, Vishal, you raised hand and now your hand has gone down. You want to say some quick comment? Or please.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the nice talk, Sunita. I have one question. Like, do you guys also work on promoting intercaste marriages? Because it's also one way to like annihilate caste. So,
Yes.
if you have any comment on
Yeah,
that?
this is the most eligible bachelor asking this
Oh my
question.
God! Oh my God! Okay. So, seriously,
Okay.
I shouldn't have attended this. So this is so embarrassing, Venkat. Not cool.
Well, we'll
Not
take
cool.
that question we'll take offline because I know lots of eligible women.
Oh.
Or,
I take my question back. I'm so sorry. Seriously, Venkat.
yes, absolutely. And I myself am married. I mean, not just intercaste, but also interfaith marriages, and I'm in one. I think it's really important to. I think that's really important, intercaste marriage. And there's a number of organizations in India that actually work specifically on that, and promoting what is it called, the special something marriage. There's a special kind of marriage where you don't have to say your caste or your religion. Special act marriage or something, and that's how they promote that kind of marriage. And we've worked with them, and we've even honored them in our gala with an award. So I think that's really important. I think it's kind of the question of how are we going to annihilate caste. I think this is one very concrete way that caste will be annihilated is if we marry across caste. So thank you for that.
Okay. And I have like one more question. Venkat, can I ask one more
go ahead quickly.
Yeah. So another way like to work on like annihilating caste is giving the political power to marginalized communities. So do you guys like promote any do you guys have any like way to promote like getting political power to marginalized community? Because we have been seeing that the political power, it's always in the hand of upper caste people. So I would like to know your thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I think that's really important. As a 501c3 organization, we're not allowed to do sort of political kind of work in that sense of politics, but we are going to start a Hindu 501c4, which can do, specific political work along those lines. And yeah, I agree that it's been so inspiring in these Indian elections to see so many, people from oppressed castes and women coming forward in these elections. And I think that is absolutely, the way to change the status quo. And we will do more with our 501c4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, Sanjay Bhagat. Go ahead, Sanjay.
Venkat, Jeremy has his questions in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
chat.
Okay, then I'll go to
Yeah,
Jeremy.
please take
So
that.
Jeremy, I know I read that question. So Jeremy, you want to ask this question yourself? Hello, Jeremy.
Sure, I can if you
Yeah.
want. I
Hi,
mean,
Jeremy. Yeah. Is it
hi,
Jeremy
how are you?
Venkat, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Hi. How are you?
How are you? Good to see
JaiBhim.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
JaiBhim, JaiBhim.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so the question was really kind of stemming from some interest I've had in your organization and this kind of idea of devotionalism or bhakti. And so I'll just read the question. The stuff above is kind of in context for that. So the question is how can devotion, bhakti, be used to cross these differences? Devotion sometimes can get in the way, whether that's Hindu devotionalism or Ambedkarite devotionalism. So what are some examples you can give of using this strong type of devotionalism for good, inclusivity, and change?
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Viswanath. Sunita.
Well, I think this question should be posed to some of the Hindu religious leaders that we are organizing. We're organizing them here in this country through this Samadarshini project that I mentioned. Samadarshini, we translate it as seeing equally. That's the name of our project. And all the priests and priestesses and temple leaders and a few theologians that are part of the project would be much better qualified than me to answer this question. But for me, my religious practice is really this work. Karma yoga is a very valid path in Hinduism. And so for me, just losing myself in this work of organizing at the grassroots level for human dignity as a Hindu and connecting all of that together is my devotion. And the point of it is for the differences to be erased. And I say this with humility because the differences are about privilege and lack of privilege. And so I'm not, denying the inequality that exists, but in the end, what we want, the vision at the end, when we all lose ourselves, is that we not only that we are equal, but that we are one. And not only that we are one, but that we are one with the universe, where we're beyond ourselves. So when that is the ultimate goal, I feel, that's where my devotion leads me, and that's all I can tell you. But I can connect you to theologians who can tell you more.
No, yeah, that's helpful. Thanks. I think it's interesting, and I like the kind of connection to the one and interdependence that you talk about. And I just think it's interesting because oftentimes devotionalism, whether it's in the Ambedkarite community or others, becomes so kind of monolithic, and it misses that point of connecting to the one to many, if you will, the interconnectedness. And so that's what I was speaking to that, because it's easy to separate the people from the problem as kind of people in my field of peace and conflict studies talk about. But then how do you do that in practice, right? Is a little different.
Yeah. And sometimes
Thank you, Jeremy.
And sometimes this kind of thinking gets dismissed as all lives matter. And so we have to be careful about how we think about, human dignity of all. It means that people who have a certain kind of, it's not like all caste oppressed people are the same. Among caste oppressed people, there are more caste oppressed and less caste oppressed.
Yes.
And so if we don't look at all of that, we are doing a disservice to our movement and our sincere intention to bring about justice for the most oppressed. And so those kinds of thoughts come into the work that I do. And we have to be careful about how we talk about it, but not talking about it is not an option as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So that's one of the unique construct of caste is the hierarchy. Oh my God, it is actually that is really holding it strong. Every even among I mean, what we consider untouchable communities, they practice untouchability. I mean, we have, at least in Telugu, we have like more than 30 subcastes are there, and it's a sad part of the story is, I mean, throughout, I mean, the whole spectrum of caste, everybody feels superior at certain level, and that is really, really is very sad
But
part.
it isn't Brahmins and Dalits. It's like sometimes this is so simplified. That isn't what it is. There's everything in between. And if we are going to annihilate caste, we need to be
It is
working at all of those.
the strongest way. Now, I mean, especially in Telugu, I mean, I tell my friends from other parts, I mean, the Brahmins, I don't see any big problem of caste atrocities, discrimination. In fact, most of what we see from, I mean, especially from Brahmins, they're in the left movement, they're in the right movement, and they're in the, I mean, like doing at least some better ones, but there's very small percentage also population who call, but we have new Brahmins. Okay, I've seen these dominant castes like Reddis, Kammas, one Shudras, who are, they become so fundamental, so religious, even among backward communities. Like I have to, full disclosure, I come from Vishwakarma background, and they think they're Brahmins. I mean, it's so everybody, so there is layers of people who can feel superiority, and then, of course, the whole society becomes unequal, and some people at the bottom are really, really losing. So anyway, thanks for the clarification. Going back to Sanjay ji, please go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sanjay is one of the founders of Boston Study Group, and he is one of the main pillars of Boston Study Group here.
And Sanjay, thank you for inviting me.
Sanjay ji has a
No.
lot of hard work he puts in keeping PSG thriving. So thank you, Sanjay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunita, for a nice speech, and thanks for accepting our invitations. And we wanted to basically understand the different narratives, different thought process of various organizations which are working here. And we were at the same time, we are aware that there may be some sort of the backlash or some sort of anything with that, but still we wanted to listen to you and understand how this particular organization works. So thanks for that. So I have one suggestion and one question. So one suggestion is, in the beginning you said that the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, I believe 1 or 2 times you said, as a Dalit right activist. And that is where our concerns is, because I know from my childhood, means for 4 or 5 decades, basically, the Ambedkar was not only limited to the Dalit, he was limited to only the Mahar within the Dalit community. Okay, just because of this narrative that he has worked for only the Mahar community and all this, because people were not aware of what Baba Sahib has done for not only the Dalit community, but everyone, because whatever he has done for the labor forces. So it is not just the Dalit, it is from Dalit to the Brahmin, correct? The labor can be anywhere, union can be anywhere. Same thing of the women, ST and OBC. So calling him basically the Dalit right activist is just again limiting himself to a very specific cause, whereas he has done much more for the others. And so I will suggest that whenever in the future, please call him more like a human rights activist, civil rights activist. And that is what he did for basically betterment of the life of each and everyone, including the woman. So that is one suggestion. Then second thing is about, so Boston Study Group conducts the workshop on the caste in the universities and all this. So we go there, and there are many students who are origin, means Indians, but born here, correct? And they sometimes say, and even some students from India also who are born in India and here they have come here, they say, oh, we don't know that there is a caste or something like that, when we have gone through all the workshop and talking about the caste. And I ask a very simple question there. Does anyone from your family, close one, or your distant family had married to someone from a caste which is lower than whatever the caste you belongs to? Okay. And the answer always comes negative. So I said that that particular thing itself, whether knowingly or unknowingly, basically you follow the caste system. Basically, you believe in the caste, whether it is knowingly or unknowingly, you may not be knowing in that one. So from that perspective, I wanted to know, means when Hindus for human rights, basically it's fighting for the anti-caste and the movement, and as we and you said for the annihilation of the caste also. So my question is, what are the measurable and the verifiable pointers HHFR have to show that they are casteless and basically contributing towards the annihilation of the caste?
Well, let's see. Pretty much everything that we do, I think every time we speak, we explicitly say that we are Hindus that stand against not just caste discrimination, but the entire system of caste. I mean, that's step one. Just be, and any time we're in the Hindu community and people say to us, "Oh, caste, it's in the past. It doesn't exist anymore." We hear that all the time from our own community. And you know, the Suraj Yengde says you have to be a suicide bomber in your own family. I think we do that. We take that very, very seriously. So in our own families and community, we don't go in without bringing up caste. So we insist on the conversation, the difficult conversation. So that's one, and that's bare minimum, step one. So beyond that, I think the place where I feel that, you know, I get the most hope that maybe we can make measurable, lasting change is the work that's in a way the hardest that I'm involved in, which is the work with the religious leaders, because we have so few. I wish we had so many, but we don't. But the thing is, if we have let's say a dozen in America and 40 or 45 or so in India who are religious leaders, so swamis and sadhvis and priests and mahants who say they denounce caste entirely, that's about the number that we have. And it's it's not even a drop in the bucket. But the fact that we know that many means that there must be so many more that we don't know. And it just means that at least we have somewhere to start. And those religious leaders, I personally am hard at work to bring them together in projects and initiatives where they have theological conversations about what are the Hindu resources that actually support and undergird a vision for society without caste. How can we put that out there? And these particular priests that we know, when they do weddings, when they do rituals, they don't bring caste into it. So there's a grassroots religious movement, however tiny, that is, you know, spreading a way of being Hindu without caste. So that gives me a lot of hope. Other measurable things, right? I mean, we are doing right now, we already announced it, we're doing an annihilation of caste reading group. So we're educating, we're taking Ambedkar to heart, deeply to heart, and using the teachings to motivate everything that we do. Yeah, I mean, we do work with youth. I think that's very important, whether it's schools or even more important than schools is college campuses where the Hindu right has just, you know, they've had the space to themselves because so much happens in this country where people identify with their religion. So many Hindu organizations on campuses have been explicitly affiliated with Hindu Student Council, which is, you know, like, I mean, unquestionably a Hindu right organization. And they've had the space to themselves because we have only recently come on the scene. So we are raising money so that we can be present on campuses across the country so that we can bring anti-caste teachings and a way to be a humane, loving Hindu, so that there's a young person who arrives on campus, you know, and they want to find a Hindu group to be with, there's an alternative to the hateful one. So these are the kinds of things we're doing. I'm not good at measurable, but if our staff team were here, they would tell you more about measurable. I'm not so good at that.
Okay, thanks, Sunita. Yeah, so do you have any, you know, groups working in the Massachusetts universities?
Yeah, do you know, so Shravya, our board member,
Correct, correct. Yeah.
is
So
Yeah, yeah.
she was
She's
part
in
of our
Harvard, right?
Boston study group. Yeah,
so
Harvard. So
she's she's trying to build a chapter there.
Good, good.
So she would be the one to talk to.
okay.
And yeah, we'll be happy to work with her or anybody to sensitize the universities. That's one of the tasks. We are also taking it very seriously, and we
And
would like
something
to.
we've done recently, I mean, it's, I wish we weren't in this situation with the genocide happening right now in Gaza, but because of the incredible student activism that we've
Yeah.
seen, and many Indian students who are from the Hindu community are taking part in the activism on Gaza. So we have started. We have a whole resource. It's on our website. Doing teach-ins so that students can connect what's happening with Hindutva, because they are actually inextricable. So we are doing those teach-ins on campus, and that's been, there are campuses where we haven't even met the students, but they have found the zine, our resource, and they've used it and they've told us. So that's been a very exciting new initiative that we've been involved in.
Okay, I think it's
Venkat,
almost 1.5
Charudatta,
hours.
yeah,
We're gonna.
Charudatta raised the hand in between, and
Charudatta?
yeah, can you just check whether he wanted to ask any question
Yeah,
or
yeah. Charu, you want?
Yeah.
He's there. Yeah, Charu.
Yeah. Sorry, actually, I joined late. I just wanted to say I'm the latest, victim of the discrimination. And you said there are there are two things like less harass and more harass. But I found one category where these things are not on a surface. Like I can't prove what exactly happened with me, but I was discriminated and harassed by certain action by my professor, and it was very systematic. I was into the academia, that's why I able to figure it out. I took support of all the members, and then I pointed out in a way that he understand what I am going through, and now he is backward, like step back, and I change my supervisor eventually. But these kind of things are really like really what you say uh, horrible for people like me, who like I've been in academia for 12 years. I never experienced that in India, but in USA it was like hidden, not on the surface, but I gone through all that kind of harassment, and it was so painful for me. So I just wanted to share these things, and thank you very much for your initiative. I'm also part of these teams, and definitely I will love to be connect with all of you, and I will share my experience once I go through all that things, because now in this process. But yeah, definitely I will be communicating in future. Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
really sorry that you went through this, and we can all be together. I mean, somebody once said to me, "Why don't you leave your Hinduism in your house? Don't bring it to the street." And it was like, it must have been a Hindu, I don't know, I guess it was a Hindutva type person who said that to me. And my response was, I want to keep it at home. I don't want to bring it out. It's my personal faith. But as long as you bring this monstrous version of my faith to the street, I have to be there.
Yeah.
And so for what you're talking about, Charudatta, when people fight caste, especially in the diaspora, the Hindu right calls that Hindu-phobic.
Yeah.
So fighting caste is now anti-Hindu. You have to kind of do these gymnastics to understand what they're saying. So because it's called, so anyway, as a human being, I would say I would be with you and be in solidarity. But as a Hindu, given that human rights work is considered anti-Hindu, I have to be there as a Hindu to say no. It is not anti-Hindu to fight discrimination. In fact, it is, according to my understanding of my faith, you are anti-Hindu because you are discriminating.
Yeah.
So this is why, another reason why I think, because the Hindu right is taking advantage of a good movement in this country, where the country is reckoning with its racist past, its genocidal past, and people don't want to be racist. And therefore, they don't want to be Islamophobic and anti-Semitic. And then this Hindu phobia has cropped up, so that now there's a triptych of things they don't want to be. But Hindu phobia, of course, I am not for any kind of discrimination against anyone, including Hindus. But a lot of times it's not Hindu phobia, it's a construct. And we, as Hindus, we can say that. We can
Yeah.
say, no, that is not Hindu phobic. So strategically, again, I think having a Hindu group saying, like in the Cisco case, it was important that there was a Hindu voice signing on to the amicus brief.
Right. Yeah, that's very much need of the hour. If we don't, if we like Hindu are like, not standing for and understanding this, because these people may not have that context, like why he's saying like discrimination or harassment. They will just like, those who are not having any knowledge of this terminology, they say, "Arey, this guy is anti-Hindu," and that's it for them. And they just like discriminate or they isolate me and they just stop my everything. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that is very much need of the area.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think, we are at 1.5 hours into this, and we have a last question we'll take. This is from Rumni Saha. Please go ahead, Rumni.
Hello. I actually put my question in the chat, so I don't want to repeat, but if you want, I can quickly.
Why don't you ask? Yeah, it'll be nice. Yeah.
Sure.
Please.
So the first one is I wanted to know what we can do, practical steps. How can I support? What do you need in your work? And the second thing is that I'm the Hindu and the UU chaplain at Wellesley College. And I was wondering what I can do.
I think I was just connected with you.
Exactly. Yes. Abhi connected us. So I hope to speak with you, but I just wanted to find out, since we're talking about higher ed chaplains, not higher ed chaplaincy, work on higher ed campuses, what can I do specifically to promote this work, which I wholeheartedly agree with you. And I also, one quick thing, I do believe that we need to name it. It is absolutely important to name what we're doing. It's anti-caste because it needs to be uplifted. It hasn't been, and that's one of the problems, right? Just kind of, skirting around the issue. So yes, what can we do?
Wonderful that you're here. Really wonderful. And I'm sorry I didn't write back to you yet.
No problem. No problem.
We desperately need, once Linda Sarsour, the Palestinian activist, I was on a panel with her, and she stood up and she said that her radical perspective on Islam and human rights is mainstream, and she can say it in any mosque. I don't know if that's true, but I do know that I cannot go into just about any temple and say what I say. And so at the moment, my views in the Hindu community, and I'm sad and ashamed, they are not mainstream. And so those of us, when we find each other who are Hindu and we are okay identifying as Hindu, and we stand against caste and we are appalled by Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, we need each other. So even just connecting with you is, it means a lot. And then beyond that, what do we need to do? So Hindu American Foundation just got $1 million donation from one family. That is just one donation that came in the news. God knows how many people are donating at those kinds of high levels. If Hindus for Human Rights is going to be a force to take on the Hindu right in this country, we need to build our resources. If we're going to stay in the game, we need to have money to fight their money. And that's one very concrete thing. All of our groups need to be resourced. All of us in the resistance movements. We're doing, all of us, all the organizations represented on this call, including us and all of our partners, we're doing this 24/7 without resources because we believe in this. And this is not sustainable. That's one thing. And the second thing is Hindus for Human Rights. We've just launched a membership campaign because our work, I think I said this, is in policy advocacy and media advocacy. That's really important. But I believe the most important part of our work is the grassroots base building. So that's why we have this membership campaign. You don't have to be Hindu to join us as a member. I'm a Hindu and I'm a member of JVP. I'm a member of IAMC. I think if you support a mission and you believe in it and you want to fight with a group of people, you can join as a member. So folks should join HFHR as a member. And then anybody that you know out there in the community, on your campus, in your family, among your friends who might join. I think it costs $25 to join. To pay that little amount and become part of a movement is really important, so that we, the numbers, really, and we may not, Hindus for Human Rights may not have huge numbers, but actually, when you put us together with the Dalit and Ambedkarite groups that we partner with, the Muslim groups, the Sikh groups, the Christian groups, when you put all of us together, I think we are the majority. I really do. I think that number-wise, if you take all of us who come together against hatred, I think we are the majority. And so that power of knowing that we're on the right side and we're on the majority side is what is going to give us the strength we need for the fight. And so, each of our groups should build our base, and Hindus for Human Rights has a membership program, Rumni. So if you can
I just joined.
Get the word out to everybody that you...
Absolutely, I will. Yeah, I just joined myself.
That we'll talk off the channel.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry I have to keep my video turned off, but we will connect. So thank you. And I have to sign off. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you for your amazing work.
Thank you, Rumni, for asking that question. And with that, I think we would like to conclude this. So, Sunita Garu, it's immensely, we are proud and to have you, and thank you. Thanks a lot for taking your time out. So it was a very important discussion. This is recorded, it's available. And thank you so much for your time, and also all the participants. I know it's a bright spring day in America, summer actually, and today is actually India playing finals. Okay, I'm actually cheering for India. So good luck to. Thank you so much for everyone, and JaiBhim, and let's wish India win the cup. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all.
Yeah, JaiBhim, and good luck to India.
JaiBhim, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.